Πριν περάσουμε στην επόμενη πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ομιλία, να σας υπενθυμίσουμε ότι τηρούνται αυστηρά όλα τα πρωτόκολλα ασφαλείας και όλοι μας, τεχνικοί, εθελοντές, ομιλητές, περνάμε κάθε μέρα από ταχαία διαγνωστικά τεστ. Μην ξεχνάτε επίσης να μας στέλνετε την άποψή σας, τα σχόλιά σας, τις σκέψεις σας και οτιδήποτε θέλετε να μοιραστείτε μαζί μας στα social media του Athens Science Festival 2021. Πάμε τώρα σινεμά. Υπάρχει κάποιος ανάμεσά σας που έχει δει τον Γκάτακα? Θυμίζω την υπόθεση στους νεότερους. Στην ταινία επιστημονικής φαντασίας Γκάτακα, ο πρωταγωνιστής Ethan Hawke υποδίεται έναν νεαρό που αγοράζει το τέλειο γενετικό προφίλ κάποιου άλλου, προκειμένου να πραγματοποιήσει το όνειρο της ζωής του. Ένα διαστημικό ταξίδι. Ο λόγος? Ο ήρωας της ταινίας είναι ένα ελαττωματικό παιδί του Θεού. Ένας από τους τελευταίους ανθρώπους μιας μελλοντικής δυστοπικής κοινωνίας που έχουν γεννηθεί με φυσικό τρόπο. Τα διαγνωστικά τεστ έχουν δείξει πως οι ατέλειες του θα του δημιουργήσουν μεγαλώνοντας σοβαρά προβλήματα υγείας. Και αυτό στο δικό του κόσμο σημαίνει πως δεν μπορεί να κατέχει μια σημαντική θέση εργασίας. Η ταινία προβλήθηκε το 1997. 24 χρόνια αργότερα ξέρουμε πως αυτό το νουάρ μέλλον που ονειρεύτηκε ο σεναριογράφος του Γκάτακα ίσως και να μην είναι τόσο μακρινό όσο νομίζουμε. Ο 20ος και ο 21ος αιώνας έφεραν εκτός από μια σημαντική παράταση του προσδόκιμου ζωής και κάτι ακόμα. Τη γνώση ή μάλλον τη συνειδητοποίηση πως ασθενείς με φαινομενικά ίδιες ασθένειες ανταποκρίνονται διαφορετικά με παρόμοιες θεραπείες. Γιατί? Διότι όπως φαίνεται κάθε άνθρωπος γεννιέται με ένα διαφορετικό υποσύνολο γενετικών χαρακτηριστικών, τα οποία διαμορφώνουν μια εξατομικευμένη αντίδραση του οργανισμού σε ένα παθογόνο αίτιο. Τι σημαίνει αυτό? Πως βαδίζουμε πλέον στην εποχή της εξατομικευμένης ιατρικής ή της ιατρικής ακριβίας, όπου κάθε θεραπεία θα προσαρμόζεται σύμφωνα με το μοριακό και βιοχημικό προφίλ του ασθενούς. Ο Άρον Ciechanover, στον οποίο θα δώσουμε το λόγο στη συνέχεια, είναι διακεκριμένος πανεπιστημιακός καθηγητής ιατρικής σχολής στο Τεχνολογικό Ινστιτούτο Technion Ισραήλ και νικητής του βραβείου Nobel Χημείας το 2004. Βρίσκεται εδώ για να μας προειδοποιήσει πως η ευρεία εφαρμογή της εξατομικευμένης ιατρικής δεν θα προσφέρει μόνο πρωτοφανείς ευκαιρίες θεραπείας, αναπόφευκτα δημιουργεί και ορισμένα πολύ σοβαρά ζητήματα βιοειθικής. Για παράδειγμα, ποιος θα εγγυηθεί την προστασία της ιδιωτικότητας από τη στιγμή που θα γίνουν διαθέσιμες οι γενετικές πληροφορίες μεγάλου μέρους του πληθυσμού? Και μια πληροφορία για το τέλος. Το 2011 η NASA χαρακτήρισε τον Γκάτακα ως την πιο αληθινή ταινία επιστημονικής φαντασίας όλων των εποχών. Τη συζήτηση θα συντονίσει η Δόκτωρ Ζωή Κούρνια, βιοχημικός, ερευνήτρια στο Ίδρυμα Ιατροβιολογικών Ερευνών της Ακαδημίας Αθηνών.
Καλησπέρα και από μένα. Είμαι η Ζωή Κούρνια και θα συντονίσω την ομιλία και τη συζήτηση με τον καθηγητή Ciechanover. Θα συνεχίσω στα αγγλικά για να μας καταλαβαίνει και ο ομιλητής μας. Good morning, everyone. We are extremely honored and delighted to welcome here to the Athens Science Festival Professor Aaron Ciechanover, the winner of the 2004 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and currently a distinguished university professor in the Faculty of Medicine, Technion, Israel Institute of Technology in Israel. So Professor Ciechanover was born in Israel in 1947, and he has received his master's in 1971 and a medical doctor degree in 1973 from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And later on, he continued with his PhD studies in the Technion, where he received his degree in 1982. And during his PhD studies as a graduate student with Dr. Hershko, and in collaboration with Dr. Rose from Philadelphia, they discovered that tagging protein substrates with ubiquitin target them for proteasomal degradation. So along all those years that have passed, it has become clear that ubiquitin-mediated proteolysis plays major roles in numerous cellular processes, and this can impact pathogenic mechanisms of many diseases containing malignancies, but also, very importantly, neurodegenerative disorders. So that system that Professor Ciechanover studied with his colleagues is now a very important platform for drug development that is expected to lead a new generation of drugs and bring in many developments in treatment of cancers and neurodegenerative disorders. And he has received a long list, of course, of prizes that we cannot mention everything, like the 2000 Lasker Award, and of course the 2004 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And he's also a member of notable societies. And today he will talk to us about personalized medicine and the connection to bioethics. And we are really looking forward to hearing his talk. So without further ado, Professor Ciechanover, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Kurnia, and welcome to this Athens Science Festival. I would love to be in Athens now, actually physically, and even having a nice lunch before the talk of some nice shrimps and taramo salata, but unfortunately, I'll have to wait a little bit until the pandemic will clear out and I'll be able to come back. I've been to your country many, many times. I have very, very good friends in Athens and I love the country. And it's only a short distance flight from here, from Israel, an hour and a half. So hopefully life will resume to normal soon. I'm not going to talk to you today about our discovery, but rather on something completely else, which may be more contemporary, and that's the COVID pandemic. But you probably read a lot in the newspaper and heard in the news about the vaccination and about the hospitals and so on. I'm not going even to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about the humane side of the COVID-19. As you know, medicine is a profession that deals with human beings, not with other creatures. And human beings have feelings, have thoughts, have families. They are coming from different countries with different cultures and histories. And there is a lot of ethical issues that are related to any disease, especially to pandemic, that hits the whole world with millions and millions of people being affected. Unfortunately, many are dying. And I would like to relate mostly to the ethical issues related to the pandemic. And there are several of them, not all of them, and I will talk only about 5 of them just to give you a very different view of the pandemic. So the first one is the treatment priorities. So what is a treatment priority? At the very beginning, when the pandemic started, and even now in East Europe, in Hungary, in Poland, in the Czech Republic, there is an issue of priority. You know, we have typically few intensive care units. The teams, the professional teams are also limited in number. The number of respirators of the machines are limited. And unfortunately, at times, we do have to prioritize. In Israel, we were thinking about it during the first wave in March and April. Luckily, we didn't get to the point that we had to sort out, but we appointed a committee that will decide about basically whom to issue a death sentence by not treating and whom to try to save. So how people can do it? How can we decide about whom will die and who will survive? So the committee came with a lot of criteria. Some of them were age and some of them were the chances of recovering premorbid conditions like other diseases that the patient had, like heart diseases and cancer and so on and so forth. It had to go via several cycles of revisions, and certainly it wouldn't have been if implemented the decision of one person, but a whole committee should decide who will basically will not get treatment and who will get treatment. So you see here, I took it from the newspaper. Everything that I'm going to show you is about, was taken from the literature, from the newspaper that we all read, but maybe we haven't thought about it. So this is from about Italy, in North Italy, in Milan, that Italian doctors on coronavirus frontline face top calls on whom to save. This is probably one of the most difficult decisions that any medical care professional should take, either it's a physician or a nurse or anybody that is dealing with patients. There is no magic solution to this. There is no black and white. We cannot write it down as a law that people should abide with. Every person that we decide upon has a life, has a family, has children, and profession and friends and whole lives around it. So it has remained a very, very difficult issue. The second issue that I would like to discuss with you are neglected subject. Again, I could learn from the Israeli, I would say in some way, unfortunate experience that we learned ourselves from, and that at the very beginning, people were, before the vaccination came to the world, people were scared to death. So people that had diseases didn't go to the hospital. They were afraid to contract coronavirus, COVID-19. So many treatments were delayed. Irradiation of cancer patients, surgery of cancer patients, catheterization of heart, and so on. And many other issues were completely neglected, like climate change, warming of the world, and so on and so forth. And now we are paying the price because the situation of patients that were not treated has worsened, and we see it now in the hospitals. Actually, we don't talk about it because it's very difficult to estimate, though we have some estimate that some people that could be alive now are going to die or died already because of cancer, because of heart diseases, because of other inflammatory diseases, because they didn't get the treatment on time. It's not only that they were afraid to go to the hospital, but also the hospitals were full with corona patients. Look at Hungary now, look at the Czech Republic, look at Italy, even nowadays with a new wave of disease, hospitals are flooded with corona patients. So naturally, there is no space for other patients. So it's not only that people are frightened to go, but they have no space in the hospital. And therefore, the current situation, the current diseases that they have are worsening. And this is very bad. We have to come to somehow balance. Did anybody tell us that coronavirus, that the disease is worse than a heart disease or a brain disease or a cancer? Not necessarily so. So how we prioritize between patients that have cancer to patients that have corona. So it's not only within the corona that we have to prioritize whom to put on a respirator, on a ventilator, and whom not, but also between patients. How much of the hospital of the hospital beds we dedicate to corona patients? Is it 100%? Is it 90%? Is it 80%? And how much we are leaving to the regular patients that are anyway coming daily to the hospital and occupy all the beds once we don't have corona. So this is another, and here you see the cartoon that people are sitting with masks in front of the television, and the climate change, which is another subject that was neglected, is there almost to drown them in the ocean of the damage that climate change is causing, while they are mostly pay their attention to COVID-19. The world is not made only of COVID-19. All the other troubles that we are living with, let it be climate, let it be diseases, let it be air pollution, let it be anything, have not taken a vacation. We are still there. And once we are going to defeat COVID-19, and we are going to defeat COVID-19. All the problems are still going to be on the table, and we'll have to deal with them, and they are going to be at that time even worse from the time point that we left them. Think about hunger in South Africa, for example. Hunger has not gone away. The locusts that have stricken Somali and have really consumed all the agriculture there and left no food to people. Amazing disaster, amazing disaster. It's still there, while the whole world attention is diverted to the pandemic. Here, another one, taking from the Institute for Cancer Research in the UK, saying pandemic to delay cancer advances by nearly 18 months. Research on cancer was delayed by a year and a half. New drugs are not coming to the market. Think about how many lives of other patients the pandemic has taken. Now let's come to the big issue of vaccination. I can tell you, I'm a scientist, I'm not an ethicist, I'm a physician and a scientist. In Israel, we are basically out of the disease, almost out of the disease. Everything has been opened, the education system, the universities, we are living completely free life. The only thing that is still limited is flying in and out of the country. But within the country, very few patients are sick. Only few hundred patients are in the hospital. I think that as of today in the morning, Saturday morning, about 200 people are on ventilators out of more than 1,000 that we had a month ago. Basically, we are walking out very quickly of the disease, and hopefully we shall not face a new wave. The reason for that, one single reason, vaccination. There is no doubt about it. Israel was blessed to have a very good infrastructure of public clinics and public hospitals. Almost the entire health system is public, and we immunize now about more than 5 million people, which is 55% of the population. The population of Israel is similar to that of Greece. We are 9 million people, and almost 60%, 55% are vaccinated. And we see a sharp decrease in the disease. And however, in Israel too, but mostly in many other countries, there is an anti-vaccine movement. And I just collected for you some photos and some cartoons. In the right lower hand, you see, trust God, not vaccines. Anti-vaccine movement might undermine pandemic effort, as we know, and so on and so forth. And another one that say, cure is worse than the virus. So that's the lower left yellow banner. So the cure, the treatment that we have, the vaccines, are even worse than the getting sick. And people say that it's a conspiracy and fake news about the vaccine, and people will die from the vaccine. And on the right lower hand, you see health is not found in a syringe. So, you know, don't trust the syringe to cure you. And what are the sources of this unbelievable movement? The sources are complicated. Some of them are completely fake news. I will bring you only 2 examples just to understand what's going on. I'm not saying that vaccines don't have side effects. They do have side effects, but compared to the benefit, it's nothing. It's really, I would say, close to zero. People are dying daily of diseases. People are dying of wars. People are dying of road accidents. The side effects of the vaccines are really nothing, though they exist, compared to the extreme benefit of it. And we saw it in Israel, and we see it now in America. America is moving very fast under the Biden administration. But here you have 2 examples of a physician and a British physician, Andrew Wakefield, who claimed that the vaccination, not against COVID-19, against childhood diseases like measles and rubella and mumps, causing autism. So mothers were frightened to death that if the children will be immunized, the children will get autism, and they stopped vaccinating them. And he published a book and people believed him, and he showed up on the television and so on and so forth. And it took billions of dollars. Don't read all that, but to make clinical experiments, because he was a doctor, to prove that he is wrong. And I just read some of the titles, and these are all science-based clinical trials to show that there is nothing wrong with a vaccination against measles, mumps, and rubella. Vaccines do not cause autism, the left upper side. There is no link between vaccines and autism. Vaccine ingredients, where the vaccine is, the fluid, the liquid in which the vaccine is contained, vaccine ingredients do not cause autism. MMR vaccine, in the middle, the very low, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine worries are not justified. And these are all written by scientists and physicians. But meanwhile, people got measles because they were not vaccinated, children, and with all the complicated, the immune complicated, the encephalopathy, the brain complications, people died, young children died just because of this fake news. So we should be very careful about fake news, which is a problem that I'm going to talk in a minute. And then once it was discovered that this was all fake news, new books came out, like The Doctor Who Fooled the World, the doctor who really misled us. People are listening to doctors, and if a doctor says something, it should be believable. But it turned out, I don't know what were the motives of Dr. Wakefield, but certainly they were wrong, and it caused a huge damage to society. And another issue is in the United States, which I really would like to discuss with you in brief. When people were asked before there was vaccination, whether they will take the vaccine once it's available, so some said yes, some said not sure, some said no, and some did not answer. If you look at the division of the people, you will see that people over the age of 80, like myself, said, yeah, the majority will take it. And indeed, Israel vaccinated first the old people who are at the high risk group. And now, actually, even in the patient that we see now in the hospitals in Israel, you will not find old people. They are all protected. But even in the United States, you see people that were very afraid. The majority, 67%, said that they will take it, and 21% said that they are not sure. So almost 90% of the people said, either yes or I'm not sure, and many took it. But look at the majority of the people that said that they will not take it. Who are they? The black people, the minority black. Look at the line just before the low one. The black people, 40% said, no, I will not take it. How is it that black people, the minority that was hit the hardest by the pandemic, most of the deaths in America were from the black poor people and so on, the less privileged people, the discriminated people in America, why is it that they were, leading the movement of objection to the vaccination? It has to do actually with their long-term, centuries-old discrimination in America. They don't trust the authorities. They don't trust the government. They are used to be cheated. They are used to be discriminated, not to be told the truth. And anything that the government, that comes from the authority, is not believable by them. But there was a special event, and I just want to comment on this one. Even in this century, and not too far away, in the 1930s, people looked at the black people, white people looked at the black people as if they were not human beings, as if they were animals. And there was an experiment that is called the Tuskegee experiment, because it was done in a small black city where researchers, white researchers and physicians, wanted to follow the natural route, the natural course of syphilis. And syphilis was quite common in the black population, and there was already a treatment of syphilis. But the physicians wanted to see how the disease developed naturally without treating the patient. So 400 black men with syphilis were told that they have something, they are getting treatment, but basically they did not get treatment. They got water, nothing. And the physicians were looking at them, how they develop a disease. It's like a physician seeing a patient sick and does not give him a treatment. And many of them died. And the experiment went for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972. And only then it was stopped. So here you see from the New York Times, syphilis victims in the US study went untreated for 40 years. And you see here on the right side, a doctor inject nothing, water, to a syphilis patient, knowing that he is not treating him. So when this happens, no wonder that the Black community doesn't trust the government, despite many apologies, including of President Clinton. And there are many other issues related to vaccination, bioethics that I don't want to relate to, like nationalism. You know, Israel has a rich country can afford buying vaccines, while poor country cannot. So should the rich people, share the vaccines with the poor people? It's political. Depends who are the poor people. Are they your friends, or they are not your friends? I don't want to criticize the government of Israel, but we were involved in the same very issue when our prime minister wanted to share some vaccines with some friendly countries, but less so with the Palestinians, who are our neighbors. I don't want to go into politics, but as a physician, I can tell you that there should be no border in treatment. It doesn't matter who is your patient. Your patient can be your enemy that wants to kill you. Nevertheless, you do have to treat him. So this is about politics. Now let's go to the pre-last issue that we discussed already very briefly, and that's the infodemic, the misinformation, the disinformation, the fake news. We all heard about it. We all knew about it. It's the social networks, unfortunately, that don't serve the purpose of what they are for. It's Twitter, it's Facebook, Mr. Zuckerberg. They did a disservice to the society by allowing misinformation to be spread. I talked before about Dr. Wakefield with his book and the television. This is nothing to compare to the social network that everybody has basically in his very hands. We are holding the cell phone, we are holding the television, and it's there, it's everywhere. I don't know a person that walks on the face of earth that is not connected somehow to the social networks. I can attest that I am not. I really detest it. I will never connect to a social network. But the misinformation went on and on and on. I'll bring you two examples, amazing examples, because we are short in time. The previous president of the United States spread disinformation almost daily. Let it be about the drug for the COVID-19, the hydroxychloroquine. It was a blunt lie, simply a blunt lie. Let it be about Clorox. He somehow misunderstood what's going on with Clorox, which is used to clean toilets with chlorine, that it's an antiviral disinfectant that you can spread over your bathtub or your whatever, but never inject it, and he thought that it's for injection. So it's I don't want even to relate to it, but if the president of the United States tells you that a drug, I happen to believe in hydroxychloroquine, who are the people not to believe him? This is the president of the United States. And then came Madonna, who have millions and millions of followers, and they said that, the whole COVID-19 immunization is a big conspiracy of the rich people of the world, that they have already the vaccine, but they made it for themselves. They hide it. They will not let other people be vaccinated except for them, the rich people. So, of course, Madonna has more followers than any scientist in the world, or all the scientists taken together. Even the leader of the United States COVID-19 program, a very fine, wonderful scientist and physician, Dr. Anthony Fauci, nobody listened to him compared to how many people are listening to Madonna. And why did she do it? We don't know. The whole idea about fake news and disinformation and misinformation is still a mystery. Probably people want their networks to be, the traffic on their Facebook page to be dynamic, because regular news are not interesting. Only fake news that are awakening mysterious feelings and fire hatred and illicit discrimination are attracting attention, while regular news, what's interesting about them. But we are not going to dissect the psychology of fake news, but all I can say that the damage that they have caused is beyond the imagination. And there are many papers that were published about it, and you see here some titles that I took for you: Science and Policy Collide During Pandemic, the Disease of Distrust, actually a new disease of distrust. Then there was a call for scientists to go to politics, because that's the only way that they can explain, that they can get to the public. Tired of science being ignored, get political. And then, of course, when President Trump was running, it said that to tackle the pandemic, Biden must overcome first distrust and division among people. So you see that scientists alone and physicians cannot do it. It must be an effort of the politicians to really fight the disinformation and the fake news, unlike President Trump that did the opposite. And now let's go to the last one before we open the discussion for questions. And that's inequality and discrimination. And this is also something typical. Whenever the world is in crisis, you know, the very thin, fragile floor that we are walking on is broken. You know, when discrimination and racism always come up when people are in trouble. Think about the Big Depression in Europe and in Germany in the late 20s and early 30s. What came out of it? Hitler and the Nazi movement. And then the killing of 20 million people, among them 6 million Jews that were exterminated in concentration camps. Because the bitterness of the poor people could be diverted to the people that are blamed for being the cause for the poverty, for being the thieves of the money, for being the owners of the banks that take all the money from the poor people. It's always, instead of the leaders blaming themselves for not running properly the country, they divert it into other minorities. We saw some of it during the crisis in Greece too. And you know all about it, what I'm talking about. But it's always this, and inequality and discrimination came out. And we remember the very cruel murder, basically, of the black person in white Minnesota, George Floyd, who was suffocated to death by a policeman that was sitting with his knee on his neck, not letting oxygen and blood getting to his brain, while the poor George Floyd was crying to his mother to help him, but then eventually surrendered and died. And this amazing, you know, it's not only policemen and it's not only people, even scientists. And science is supposed to be neutral. Science is supposed to be about facts, not about beliefs, not about prejudice, not about anything that is detached from facts. But even in science, unfortunately, there is racism and discrimination. And I'll show you, for example, I took it from the very basic, most important periodicals in science. One is Cell, and says science has a racism problem. What is racism in problem? Not moving black people up the academic ladder, discriminating women, and so on and so forth. And there is another paper coming from Nature showing you white senior academics still resist recognizing racism. if you don't recognize the problem, you'll never be able to solve it. First step in solving a problem is defining it and recognizing it. And we, the scientists, suffer from the same very problem, though in a different shape. We don't kill people, we don't murder them, but nevertheless, we cause them a lot of suffering because we are kind of a closed club that promote itself rather than looking at our environment and promoting the underprivileged, giving them an opportunity to be among us with all kinds of different reasons. So racism came up, show its head, expose its head, even during the Corona time. So I think it's time to finish and to thank you and to wish you a happy holiday season. Today is the evening of Passover, which is a very important Jewish holiday. So I'm just, in an hour, we are going to leave to celebrate with friends and family the Passover festival dinner, and you are, Christians are just going to celebrate Easter soon. So, and I wish you all not only happy holidays, but healthy time ahead of us, and hope that the pandemic will be down soon, the dust will settle, and we shall all be able to meet physically. I am exhausted of the Zoom, talking to my screen, not to seeing a single person except Zoe smiling in front of me, and having drinks together and food together. And clearly, Greece will be one of the first targets on my travel map. So thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you very much, Professor Ciechanover, for this wonderful and very contemporary talk with issues that we're all very much facing every day, actually. I have a couple of questions, and I think there was also one question from the audience. So I will start with a question from the audience, which is very much related to your talk. Regarding vaccinations, discriminations, everything. And we very recently heard about these concerns about the AstraZeneca vaccine, which I think has a lot to do with your talk. So the audience would like to know, what do you think about the news that were spread about the AstraZeneca vaccine, and whether we should be worried, or whether this is like a piece of misinformation?
I don't think it's a misinformation. There was a report that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is causing some clotting issues, some blood clotting issues. I think that the WHO went into it, and some other health agency. What they said, that the incidence of these clotting events is not higher than in the regular population, because we are all, and in any case, even if it exists, it's extremely, extremely, extremely rare. It's on the margin, probably doesn't exist at all, or on the margin. And therefore, every morning I go to work, and in order to get to my lab, I take a car, and I'm riding the highway. There is a chance that I will be involved in a road accident that either will leave me dead or severely wounded. But we are living in a polluted environment, in an industrial environment. People are smoking around us. We are eating junk food. We are doing a lot of things. I think that the risk is really, really, if it exists at all, Israel is using only the Pfizer vaccination, but I would have taken the AstraZeneca with no hesitation. Now, AstraZeneca also yesterday corrected the efficacy reports. It's a little bit less efficient vaccine than the other ones, than Moderna, and they lowered it from 79% protection to 76. But again, you have to know how to look at the numbers. It clearly reduces the severity of the disease. So even if the people get sick, the disease is much milder than without the vaccination. All in all, it's a very efficient and very safe vaccine.
Thank you very much for this information. It's very important to hear it from you. I have another question regarding you mentioned the racism in science and the discrimination for underrepresented communities like women, Black people, disabled people. And you mentioned that defining and recognizing the problem is the first step towards its solution, which I completely agree. And we see many communities still having unconscious bias and denying that this exists. But what do you think would be the next steps to address the problem once we have recognized it, or what kind of measures should we take to alert the community that this exists still?
I think that first thing is to bring it to the attention of the public. I can say things about, let me take two examples. One is the Nobel Committee and the other one is the State of Israel. So in the State of Israel, things are improving dramatically. We don't have Black people, so I can relate to women only. I'm not an American. The Black issue is mostly I would say, in America. In Israel, the issues with women is really improving dramatically. I have to take it with a grain of salt. When I studied medicine in the 60s, there were 10% women in the class. Now there are 60%. So what happened? Two things happened. First of all, recognizing the problem, but also medicine is pushed to the side. It's a very lucrative profession. Now, the most lucrative professions in Israel are, computing, the .com, high tech. Medicine is I wouldn't say low income, but a medium income profession now, and not that attractive. And women are more attracted to it, and so on and so forth. So it's not just that we are angels and recognize the system. It's also the change in the view that the profession is looked upon by the society. So, but yes, there is an improvement, and also women are becoming heads of department. My wife is a physician. Until she retired, she was a department chairman in a big hospital, in a big academic hospital of internal medicine and geriatrics. You see a lot of women, not only in the internal medicine, but also in what used to be completely masculine professions like neurosurgery and surgery. You see not only women training, but also becoming head of departments, which we see a lot. So I think that with women, it was a public campaign, very successful public campaign. We are still not seeing enough women in the academia, in the upper echelon. You see a lot of them in the PhD level, but you don't see them climbing up. Some of it is a little bit tradition. Women are still maybe affected by their mothers and by the traditional woman's role in the family of having the children, growing the children. But I think we are off this, and the next generation is now pushing from the bottom, and there are more women also in the academia. One of the example is the Nobel Prize, but I can talk about the Israel Prize, which is the highest prize that is given. Again, it was a campaign by women and by organizers that we should pay special attention. It's not discrimination for women. I don't think that any woman would like to get a prize just because of being a woman. She wants to get the prize because of being recognized by an authentic achievement. I talked to Ada Yonat, who got the Nobel Prize for the structure of the ribosome, and she told me that she would have been ashamed to get the prize for being a woman. But in the Nobel Prize, again, we are seeing more and more women. Think about this year prizes. Let's think about the chemistry prize that went to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier for the CRISPR technology, and so on and so forth. So I think that women are pushing themselves, and I think that it, at least for me as a faculty member, when I'm sitting on the committee, the issue of women is all the time in the back of my mind. When I generate a committee that I chair, I always make sure that they are equally distributed, and so on and so forth. So I think that what we should do, go to the public. It should not be discrimination for women. It should be recognizing that women are equal to us by any respect. And then we have to take some other steps. We have to make kindergarten next to working places and not throwing it on the shoulders of the woman. We have to allow husbands to take maternity leave and having the woman getting out. It depends on, the couple arrangements and so on. So we have to really build and not only talk about it, but building the infrastructure that will allowing them doing it. About discrimination in color, this is horrendous. Women and men are different for the good and, they're different. And therefore we need to build infrastructure. Color of the skin, what the hell is that? Who cares about it at all? We should give them we should open the educational system. We should make sure that they are not discriminated and so on and so forth. So, so it has to do with recognizing the problem and taking active steps. Some of them being convincing the public and the leaders that there is a problem.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think all of us as scientists should take these measures first out of all to give this perspective into the community and into the public and into the governments, actually.
Of course.
The major problem is also there. So we have another question from the audience, which asks if you think that science has the position it deserves within today's society.
Listen, science, I hear a lot from people. It's a very complicated question because I see a lot of an anti-science movement in society, which I don't understand. And people tell me from time to time something which is funny, which shows that they clearly don't have a clue what is science all about. They tell me I don't believe in science. I tell them this is excellent that you don't believe in science. You should believe in God. Science is not a religion. Science is a set of testable hypotheses that then you go to the lab and either prove it or disprove it. The fact that vaccination is working is a fact. We see it. We can count the people. We know everything. We know the mechanism. We know how it works. It has a reason. It has a chain of logic. It started at one point, how to make it, and then the antibody and the T cells and the B cells and what's going on, and then the trials. So, and people don't realize that they are surrounded by science, but they don't realize that the cell phone is science, isn't it? It's communication, it's waves, it's it's magnetic waves that are absorbed by satellites or by antenna, and then transmitted to another antenna, and then to another antenna, and then at the end, they land in the other phone. It's signals, it's all science. The refrigerator is a science. The radio, the television, it's all science. So what do you mean you don't believe in science? I think that science, for me, is my co-pilot in life. I mean, this is what it is. I think that, if we look at the life 120 years ago in the world, people were living less than 50 years. They died of infectious diseases. There was no X-ray, no CAT scan, no MRI, no vaccination, no nothing. And now we are living 85 years on the average. We added 35 years. If I would have lived 120 years ago, I would have been dead for 25 years now. And I'm still, I have an active lab. We are still, doing a lot of things. People don't appreciate it. It's all due to science. Life extension is all due to science. True, science doesn't have answers to everything. We still don't have complete answer to cancer, to dementia. But think about it. Cancer is the result of the fact that we are living long. People didn't die of cancer 100 years ago because they didn't live long enough to get cancer. Cancer is mostly, children are affected, but at a very low rate. Most of the people that get cancer and heart diseases and Alzheimer and so on are people that 100 years ago wouldn't have lived to get the disease. So, right, cancer, science still doesn't have answer to all problems. And therefore, even me, from time to time, I say, oh God. So yes, we are superstitious in a way, but science has solved the major problem: agriculture, food. Science will solve the problem of climate change. Science has solved the problem of vaccines, and it will solve the problem of COVID. If we talk a year from now, I believe that COVID may be with us, but at a very low fire. So like flu. So science for me is, is a part of my flesh and body.
And actually a part of everybody's flesh and body, as you very well described it. So thank you very much for this.
Even for people who don't believe in science, yes.
Exactly. And to couple to your last sentence as a last question, because you said that science is your flesh and body, I would like to ask you, you were awarded with a Nobel Prize in Chemistry for studies that you did during your, for work that you did during your PhD studies. And I would like to hear and inspire also the young people that are hearing us, how you were motivated to go into the lab and do this Nobel Prize awarding work in science, and what was the whole driver behind it and continues to drive you, and what was your overall experience in doing such an amazing research?
I was not driven by the Nobel Prize for sure, because I started to work on the subject with my mentor, Professor Hershko, in the late 70s, about almost 30 years before we got the Nobel Prize. You cannot predict. Science can take you, you never know what's behind the corner. You go from one corner to another, to another, to another, and you never know what's behind. I was driven by curiosity. I was a physician. I was trained as a physician. And I thought that maybe it was a naive thought, but it's always good to be a child and to be naive. I think the children are much smarter than we are, the adults, because we are occupied with prejudice, with opinions. We are too tough. Children are, they are free thinking creatures. They are not limited by anything. They are not shying out. And I was naive at the time because I said, okay, when you see a person that is sick, it's already the end result. He got the cancer. Maybe we shall not be able to cure him. But why he became sick to start with? Why cancer started at him? Why it didn't start in another person? Why at all we have cancer? And I thought that if I go to science, I'll be able to understand the mechanism of diseases. Why diseases come at the first time. I didn't want to treat sick patients or disease patients. I wanted to understand why diseases come at the first time, at the first place. So it was very naive because, the world of diseases is huge. It's endless, and the world of drugs is endless. So how did I dare thinking about it? And when I started to work with Professor Hershko, who is a physician himself, we worked on a problem that did not link at all to medicine. We worked about how our body proteins are replaced, how the old ones, the damaged ones, are moved away and the new ones are being synthesized. And there was no diseases at all. Actually, we didn't discover any drug. Based on our studies, drug companies and researchers discovered drugs, and the drugs are now helping millions of people worldwide, and more drugs are coming to the market all the time. So we didn't think about drugs, and we didn't think about diseases. I thought about, okay, I want to understand the mechanism of disease, but then I trapped with the beauty of science. Science for me is a beautiful piece of art. The intricate, complex processes, the evolution, how did we become what we are? It's really gorgeous, the colors, the complexity. So I was trapped by the beauty and the complexity of science. And I was lucky enough to see that our discovery that has nothing to do with medicine led at the end, not at the end, maybe at the beginning, we don't know where we are, to the development of drugs and to millions of people that some of them I know, they come to thank me. And it just shows you, and that will be the concluding statement, that science is a chain. We didn't begin it, and we are not going to end it. We are a thin layer in the middle. We are standing on the shoulders of people that that generated the knowledge up to the point that we entered. We added a little piece of knowledge on top of it, and then other people came and added another piece of knowledge, and it will go forever, much beyond my life and the life of my children and grandchildren and grandchildren, because that's the beauty of it. Science is endless. It's an everlasting and expanding enterprise that aims to better human life.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this amazing note in the end, and of course for the amazing talk that you gave to all of us with perspectives that we should be having in mind during the pandemic and beyond. So once again, I would like to thank you on behalf of the Athens Science Festival and of all our audience. And we really hope that in the upcoming Athens Science Festivals, we will be able to welcome you in person and take you out to enjoy the Athenian sun and hospitality.
And don't forget the taramo salata.
Of course. So thank you very much once again, Professor Ciechanover. It was a real honor. Thank you.